Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Boogie Board Tiki Bar. Today, I am delighted to be joined by Sean Steigerwald. He's in Nashville, Tennessee, braving the cold in Nashville right now. Sean, how are you?
I'm great. A little chilly. It's unorthodox here, but yeah, doing great.
How bad is it? Because I'm in Texas. I'm in Austin. There's a light dusting of snow on the ground, and people are freaking out.
Yeah, it's 24 degrees, which I feel like is 20 degrees below what it should be. But we're doing okay though. No snow yet.
And you're from North Carolina originally?
Yeah, from Raleigh, North Carolina. It's really similar climate, so the cold also spooks them too.
Okay, so if I'm talking to a 10-year-old Sean running around in Raleigh, North Carolina, I don't think you want to build a business in the go-to-market space yet. So what did you want to be when you were a kid?
Yeah, the irony of living in Nashville now is as a kid I wanted to be a drummer in a band. So I had started playing drums as a young kid, got really into it in high school, and then actually in college dropped out for a short time to tour with a band, and then decided that was not for me. Went back to school, and then I now ended up living in the country capital of the world. Still play drums in a country band, but yeah, that was the original dream, and now I'm in B2B SaaS.
Okay, well, so tell us the story of dropping out of college to go drum around the country. That sounds awesome.
Yeah, I realized freshman year I was doing great. Like just getting good grades. Talked to my counselor, and I was in a really good band, and we wanted to give it a go. And I asked her, how does this work? Like, can you just leave? She was like, yeah, you can leave. As long as you leave on your own accord, you can just sign back up when you're ready to come back in and send the check in, and you're all good. So it's actually pretty easy. So I decided to and I also had very supportive parents, which was a huge help. But I decided to take a semester, so 6 months, and give it a go. And we did that. Spent a lot of time in a big blue 15-passenger van going up and down the East Coast, playing a bunch of random bars, restaurants, and venues. And then, as most bands do, it got a little dramatic towards the end, blew up spectacularly, not in a good way. And then I said, going back to school.
Well, at least we have the docu-series to
Yeah.
look forward to. So you go back to school, post-band life. You're presumably a pragmatic adult now. Realize life on the road isn't for you. What are you studying when you're at NC State?
Yeah, so I was in the business school. I was studying marketing originally, and then ended up in entrepreneurship, which is really where I found kind of my people, I'd say, and I think really learned the most. Entrepreneurship was more of like an applied degree. So like we did a lot of like real world case studies. We really went out and kind of had like a real business concept, and then did a whole bunch of financial modeling and market research around that. And that's where I really found myself taking class seriously and really diving in. And then that's what led me to my career today, just now being a serial entrepreneur.
And so you graduate NC State, you've got this entrepreneurship degree, and I know you have the bug because quickly after you started a company, but you did go to work for a little bit first, right?
Yeah. And actually, in hindsight, I wish I would have worked a little bit longer, but it's fun. You do get the bug, and you're ready to go. But yeah, I worked for a great little small e-commerce company. It was before, I think, like e-commerce was cool. I think it was even before Shopify was really a big thing. Had eBay and Amazon stores in this really fast growing warehouse in Morrisville, North Carolina. And I was technically running marketing for them, but it was kind of just doing a little bit of everything. And in hindsight, I had a lot more to learn from them. But yeah, I worked for about 7 or 8 months, and then had the whole time just been meeting up with what would be my co-founders, which is an old professor of mine, Lewis, and then an old classmate of mine, John. And we had just been meeting up periodically to talk about different ideas. And we had finally found one in Millar 2, and it was time to jump off and do it.
So what's the story of Malartu? So you started it with one of your college professors and a friend?
I did. Yeah. And so we're all still really close today. But yeah, he was actually one of the entrepreneurship professors, awesome guy, huge inspiration for all of us. And John and I, who is a fellow classmate, had this idea to help pool and small investors into these little investment funds to just kind of create more investment for startups. And at the time, there was a lot of regulation changing around who could invest in startups. And we thought there was just generally an opportunity as these changes happen to be kind of the platform that like enables that. And so when we had just run the idea by Lewis, because of his work, his take was, look, if you don't do it, I'll do it. So let's just do it together, because it was, that was going to ultimately impact a lot of his students and a lot of the work he'd done over the last decade. So yeah, the three of us teamed up and built that. So originally that was called Millar 2 Funds. Our first mistake was this was a really bad name, hard to say. But and then throughout that, we kind of learned a lot of lessons around, ironically, like the investment syndicate fund part actually did work. We were able to put together a handful of funds that invested in over 25 startups in a relatively short amount of time, but it was just tough to make money and keep the lights on. So we ended up building an analytics product that took many kind of turns, but that's how we ultimately ended up making money. And that was under Muller2 Analytics, just kind of different product into the same company.
So where are you at personally at this time? Because now you're like 23 years old or 22
Yeah.
when you start this company. And there's the allure of entrepreneurship, and then there's the practical reality where you're working ridiculous hours. You presumably have no money. How are you dealing with that lifestyle?
Yeah, so we had a tiny bit of money. We had a great stable of small angel investors that I still owe so much to, and just taking a bet on a 23-year-old who thought he could make many venture capital funds with absolutely no experience. So I think part of it was like they saw our determination, like we weren't going to quit, and so they invested, and that's kind of how we ran a lot of the business, and then we proved out the model that we could raise funds outside of that and then invest them in the companies, and then they funded the pivot to analytics as well. But yeah, I mean, it's kind of the benefit of being young and I guess hungry in the literal sense. Like we were able to do a lot with very little money. In Raleigh, North Carolina, especially then, but still now, is a low cost of living, so it's a relatively cheap place to do this. I think it was a little bit easier to do than in markets like New York or the Bay Area. So yeah, we just kept going, and then eventually we're making revenue with the analytics product, which helped towards the end there until our acquisition by Fort Capital in 2021.
What was the hardest part of that actual pivot? Because you're not just pivoting products at that point. You're pivoting business models. You're pivoting the style of product that you're selling. You're now offering this more technical product. What's the hardest part for you as a founder?
Yeah, I mean, the hardest part is you're really starting another company. Like you've already given what you probably thought was everything to, in that case, it was 3 years, I think 2 or 3 years of the fund investment platform. And it's just a ton of work. Like anybody who started anything, it's not that you working a long, I don't know, 9-to-5 type job. Like you love what you're doing, but you're just doing it all the time. So for the pivot, the hardest part was just recommitting all of that over again with really the same or maybe even less resources. But again, just helps to be young. I'm not sure I have it in me to do it again today, but maybe. But I also, I think CustomerIQ, for example, just a lot of lessons learned put to work out the gate there. But yeah, I'd say that recommitment's pretty tough.
Absolutely, I can only imagine. And so I want to get to CustomerIQ in a second, but you also have this jaunt as the head of product at Fortify. I wonder if you could tell me about your experience stepping into the head of product seat there.
Yeah, that was incredible. So that was a result of Fort Capital in acquiring Muller2. And so it acquired our team to build this platform called Fortify. And as a result of that, I led the product there. So we took really a combination of what we learned, even on the investment side, and then certainly on the analytics platform side, and built a loan origination platform for Fort Capital Resources, which did a lot of equipment finance and commercial lending. My experience there, my biggest learning was really everything product management related when we built that analytics platform. Like we made every mistake there was to make, just in that it was kind of like thought up an idea, went and built it, shipped things, and then just kind of kept like building in a silo instead of talking to the users we already had on our platform. And in hindsight, we would have done a lot of things differently. Did the opposite with Fortify, where it was awesome. We were working, the tool on half of it is really an internal tool. So we were working literally side by side with the users to help them just kind of like in their operational day-to-day, how can we build the software to make that easier? And then working really closely with vendors that originated the loans to make financing for their customers really easy. And so over the course of a couple of years, a small team, we built that manages tens of millions of dollars in transactions every year now, and it's still going, and the team's flourishing, and they're killing it.
Love that.
Yeah.
And at some point you get bitten again by this bug, and it brings you to CustomerIQ. So what was the genesis for CustomerIQ?
Yeah, it was certainly, it's like the bug stays with you, really. So I wanted kind of another swing at this whole thing, just from the lessons learned with Muller2, and then seeing, frankly, things work with Fortify. I wanted to just kind of go out and do it again. And then the second half of that was, there's this massive wave that I could not ignore in generative AI. And at some point in 23, I started playing with the OpenAI playground. This was before ChatGPT. So I had actually, through my work with product, like I had these transcripts of customer calls and a bunch of notes from customer conversations that I had where I was doing like product discovery work. And one of the first things I realized in playing with the API was that I could just feed it this huge amount of unstructured text and data and then get all of these awesome little like micro notes and summaries back. And in my case, I wanted to pull out, like what are the pain points people are talking about in the course of this conversation, the questions they ask. And then I wanted to ultimately use that in product development. And so that just the more I got into that, I realized there was just a huge opportunity. And if it wasn't that, it was going to be something close to it, and figured that was as good a reason as any to jump back into the world.
Absolutely. So you're ahead of the game on synthesizing text and being able to pull out critical information from that to help a user move faster, more directly, automate certain tasks. And you're focused on product at that point. And I think you eventually kind of move into the world of go to market and sales. So can you take me through the shift in your focus of persona?
Yeah, definitely. And it is funny. It's one of those things, like I've mentioned, I learned these lessons over and over again, and I just kept learning them with Customer IQ, where in hindsight, like I was using Customer IQ for go to market and sales, even though we were working with product teams. Originally, what we had built was we were going to work with product teams to take frontline conversations that sales was already having and recording with customers, and then synthesizing those, but pulling insights out from a product lens as opposed to a kind of like revenue enablement type lens. And so that was we built it's the exact same tech today. It's just kind of a different audience. But as we went to market with that, we just started to get more and more rumblings. And this was despite a lot of discovery work. I talked to many product leaders, and I think the big thing we were missing is that like whoever is creating the data ultimately has to make the decision, which in this case was sales. But as we're talking to more and more people about this, we start getting like kind of rumblings about like, hey, well, could we use this for sales? And as I was using it, I was using Customer IQ, and before my next call, I'd go in and say like, hey, what was it that Kevin was talking about his pain points were? Because I'm going to position that in this next call. And I was like, man, this is really helpful. Using it almost like a CRM. And so we just, as we got to that point, finally we had a couple what would then be customers say like, hey, look, if you can kind of change a couple of things here and do this for our sales team, we'll pay right now. And that's the signal that you're looking for when you're trying to make money building software. So we made a little bit of a shift there to just kind of focus more on the sales and ultimately customer success teams. And what's been cool to see is once they are in Customer IQ and adopted, we actually have brought on a bunch of product and product marketing teams as well that do use it for that original vision. It was just we kind of had to serve sales and the go-to-market teams first.
Absolutely. So we've used call recording software at Boogie Board for, I don't know, however long it's been available. And one of our pain points is one of the things I saw on your website is that there was always like kind of difficulty in integration with CRM and having like it actually involved in the sales steps. And so on your website, it looks like y'all have kind of thought through that, and there's an integration piece, CRM connection. Can you take me through the philosophy for how yours is different, specific for kind of sales and go-to-market teams?
Yeah, definitely. And I know that it's a buzzword right now, that agents is a buzzword, but that's kind of become the best descriptor of what we're doing differently from a lot of other folks, where we, over the last 6 months, this is months after that pivot, if you want to call that, to the go-to-market teams, we were getting requests for like, hey, these insights are great, but like, can you just help me do this thing? Like, and the first thing, for example, was CRM data entry. They're like, I'm just trying to get the team to put in these 10 fields. And it's obviously a pain for them. They're busy, but we need this data to do X, Y, and Z. And so we were like, okay, we can definitely do it. We know technically how to do it. And that's where things really started to work for us. So our focus since then, and really, I think for the foreseeable future, will be how do we help people like in workflow more so than just insights. Like if you look at the things that they do on a daily basis, how can we help them really automate like the boring administrative parts of that? And so that they can focus more on conversations like this and closing deals, that sort of thing. So the result of that is that what a lot of teams love about Customer IQ that's different from any other platform is we automate all of the CRM data entry, not just like summary notes, but if you look at any property that you need across a contact, a company, or a deal, after you get off a call or an email comes in or a ticket comes in, anything you have connected to Customer IQ, it will pull out any relevant one of those properties and then automatically update it so that job is now done for you. And then you look towards the future, we'll do things like, what's the best next steps? We'll start to execute on those next steps, write emails for you, surface the right content. But again, with this theme of like, it's part of the workflow and it's done. It's not just like an insight, like, hey, you should think about doing this. We're just going to go ahead and.
Do you have a personal favorite workflow? Obviously, you're the go-to-market person for your own company. I saw one of your LinkedIn videos was about being able to do some work in the field, which I really liked. Is there a particular workflow or feature that you use that you like a lot?
Yeah, the coolest thing I've seen as of recent is there's a professional service firm that pulls out these specific properties that then, as a result of having that, they can kind of one click generate statements of work and
Wow.
quotes. So that was like a kind of a big aha moment for me. It's like by structuring this data and then tagging on maybe one more tool, which is great for in the CRM ecosystem. There's so many tools that help with these parts of the stack. But the critical one has always been like, how do we get that data in there without any effort? And so as a result of doing that, they were able to generate these documents. And because of that, you'll kind of see a lot more similar automations come from us soon.
That's really interesting. I was having coffee with someone yesterday, and they were talking to me about introducing a new role, a new pre-sales role at their company, where they basically wanted them to come in and ask a bunch of questions so that they could have a cleaner statement of work and kind of a more cohesive implementation process. This was going to be multiple people across multiple geos. And I kind of balked at the idea. And I think you just described to me why. That's really interesting. So they're actually taking a call. Presumably they have like kind of a scripted flow, surfacing these questions, and then you're spitting something into CRM that's generating then a statement of work and a quote.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. And because you're capturing all of the context, and then you have the ability to even retroactively go get more specific details that maybe weren't taken down in notes, you're able to do that. So yeah, exactly.
Well, I have a lead for you.
All right. Yeah, perfect.
That's really good. I mean, eliminating the he said, she said of an SOW in and of itself is just kind of an amazing thing. So I love that. So you're now in space that is really exciting. It's also probably a little bit competitive. I'm wondering kind of what you're doing and excited about from your own go-to-market standpoint to stay ahead of the game.
Yeah, I mean, we just look at what our users are doing. It is really easy to get distracted by competitors. And I think on one hand, the competition is good because it means there's a market and people are spending. And I think that's why you always see kind of like a frenzy in this like sales tech and marketing tech place, because it's where a lot of the budget is in companies. So that is great. That's also the reason we're here too, because there's money to spend and we are running a business. But one thing I've found just has been true every single day is we just laser focus on, okay, our users are on a call or they're on an email, like what are they doing next? We kind of have the benefit of, because of what we're doing, we're able to also have data on that. Like we capture the next steps for our users based on calls. And we're actually in the background able to cluster those and see like what are the most popular ones. And that is a really big informant of our roadmap. But what excites me every day is like what we see is different from what a lot of our competitors are doing and releasing, which I think 23-year-old me would have been afraid of that. And now 33-year-old me is really excited by it because I know that's the right answer. And anyway, so yeah, the big one that I think has shown so far is that a lot of people say they automate CRM data entry, but we knew that has to be 100% coverage, like every property, drop downs, checkboxes, radio buttons, open-ended text fields, like that is the job to be done. And for a lot of teams, like they don't even get paid if they don't do certain things like that. So we focused on that. Like, how do we deliver 100% coverage there and just see kind of similar things moving forward.
And you're relying mostly on a product-led growth strategy. I'm hoping you can give me your hot take here.
So it might appear that way. I'm still not sold on product-led growth. I think for a lot of teams, especially in AI, unless you're kind of doing like one very obviously specific thing, which is not knocking that at all. In fact, I'm kind of jealous of it in a lot of ways, but we are automating a workflow. So it does take some explaining. So we're kind of have a hybrid approach right now where people can come in, they can try it. If they know exactly what they want to do, they can certainly accomplish it. And we work every day to make that as easy as possible. But we do end up talking to most teams, which I guess would make more of like a sales approach. So in a lot of ways, I think product-led growth is overblown. We could dive into a little bit of that, but we do have an outbound strategy as well.
Yeah, I asked the question in a bit of a weird way, but I was hoping for your take on that, because I also tend to think that product-led growth is mostly an untruth, at least.
Yeah, I think people have questions and they want service. And I think actually in like the AI age, the next 5-10 years, that actually only increases. I think if people didn't want that, then form fills would have been like the answer to everything. Like there was always a way for us to like capture people's information and serve them different experiences in the product, but salespeople are alive and well. So in our case, yeah, we have people that are like, look, I can connect to this and I can do CRM, but here's a specific workflow I've been thinking about. Can we tackle that? And if so, we've got 20 seats waiting, or 200 seats, whatever that might be. And I don't think those sales happen without that conversation, which I guess that could still be considered product led, but I fully anticipate having that kind of one-to-one connection with our customers and prospects moving forward. And I, in fact, think it will be why we continue to win deals against competitors.
I love that. So you spend a lot of time in the go-to-market space. I know you're on LinkedIn. I'm curious if there's anything that's in the news or the mainstream today, or maybe a widely held belief that's kind of popping up where you have a contrarian take on what seems to be the conventional wisdom.
Yeah, it's I was talking about it earlier this morning, so maybe it's just too relevant. But the whole conversation around how seat-based pricing is dead, I think, is just totally false. I'm not going to pretend to know what happens in the next 5 to 10 years, but I think anybody selling software would know that CFOs just do not want to have this unknown bill at the end of every month or quarter or year, whatever that is a result of all this usage-based and outcome-based pricing. And in fact, I don't think people like to consider SaaS software AI as a cost of goods sold, which is like outcome-based would kind of put it more in that category. It needs to be more of a margin enhancing operating cost. So every time I read that, I just think it's from people who are like talking about selling software, not actually selling software. But yeah, I think seat-based pricing is here to stay. It's easy to budget for. It scales well if you're like in our case, we help people close deals faster. We also save them a bunch of time, but that scales perfectly with the amount of seats that you buy. If you have 20 salespeople, you're going to save 20 times an hour a day, or 20 times a certain increase in pipeline velocity. So anyway, that's how we price. There's a usage component, and where we just kind of make sure that the compute scales proportionally to the number of people using it. But I don't think we could sell if we were selling based on the number of properties we populated or some kind of outcome.
Yeah, when I worked at Google Cloud for a long time, and when we first started, it was sort of like when Google Cloud was first starting. AWS was around, Azure was around, but you'd start to bring up usage-based pricing, and it would block you in deals a lot. And you'd present it as a huge advantage of, hey, you're only going to pay for what you use. If you use more and more, we're going to increase discounts automatically. And it was this really technical thing that you had to be able to understand. And enterprise businesses often couldn't do it. It was one of the things that slowed a lot of their move to clouds. And then so you had to create these contracts that were really the same contracts as before, retrofitted into this usage concept, and it ended with everyone being confused. So I'm aligned with you that simplicity wins the day.
Yeah, and I think that's it too. It obviously can be done. Like Snowflake, everyone points to, it's just a behemoth. They killed it with that. And a lot of the cloud providers, I think we basically pay usage-based pricing to OpenAI. And I mean, it can be done. I just think if you're a startup, struggling to just kind of make your way on the scene, you want to simplify things as much as possible. And getting creative on pricing a business model is not usually where you want to be creative. You want to be creative on your innovation and your product. So anyway, it just has not been my experience. So yeah, I think seat-based is here to stay.
Well, Sean, I greatly appreciate you taking us around your career and telling us a little bit about what you have going on with CustomerIQ. If someone wants to go and check out the tool today, where should they go?
Yeah, get CustomerIQ.
Get CustomerIQ.com. And if they want to hear you play in a Nashville band, where might they go to do that?
Yeah, it's a band called Four Founders. We play all around North Carolina and soon in Nashville.
Awesome. Well, hit up both, and Sean, we'll post this on LinkedIn, and everyone can connect with you there as well. Really Appreciate your time, and look forward to talking again soon.
All righty. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.